As someone who has spent hundreds of hours trying to make his car quieter, I'm going to figure out if these shock absorbers really work and look at two things that are potentially better. People buy shock absorbers hoping to make car doors silent when they close them, but there are two huge mistakes to avoid. The first one is placing shock absorbers all over the B pillar thinking that's how they work. They don't. When placing shock absorbers, you need to find this indentation that matches the rubber nub that sticks out of the door panel itself, and then all you need to do is peel it and stick it on, and when you close the door, more of the shock is absorbed, and it should sound quieter too, but does it? It seems even in the right location, they don't really make closing the door any quieter, but have a look at the footage slowed down. You can see the camera shake is visibly less with them installed, but why isn't my door quieter? And this is the second mistake. These are shock absorbers, not noise absorbers. So how do I get car doors to close quieter? Turns out door lock protective covers and lock sound dampeners are the way to go, but do they actually work? Straight away, this is where accessories become more tailored. The door lock protector I picked up was a universal one, which I measured and confirmed it fit my door lock, but it may be worth spending the extra money and picking up tailored ones. These simply slide over the locking mechanism and are meant to protect it, and in fairness, they don't say it will dampen sound, but some people believe they do. So let's see. In a word, no, these don't work. But the next one genuinely surprised me. These car door lock dampeners are made out of a hardish rubber material and need a bit of force to put them on, making sure of course to put the wider part towards the back and the thinner part towards the front, and once on, the results really were impressive. It might not fully come across on YouTube very well, so I'll highlight it with the story. When I installed these, I didn't actually tell my wife, and when she got in the car and closed the door, it sounded so different that she thought she'd not closed the door properly. The tin-like sound was gone and was replaced by a nice, crisp, heavy thunk, and the benefits didn't end there either. One thing I noticed when opening the doors is that they'd become frictionless, whereas before you had this slight resistance when you opened them. And this was a nice touch, and of course, I had to just test that they would actually lock, as you don't want your car door randomly opening, which thankfully it didn't, but it's not all good news. When I used them on the front driver and passenger doors, the effect was really pronounced, and it genuinely makes your doors sound like they are much more expensive than they actually are, but this wasn't the case with the rear doors, and I think I know why. When I applied these to the rear doors, they would often cause the locking mechanism to stick and didn't actually change the sound profile of the door closure at all, so in the end I ended up taking them off. And I think it's either a fitment issue for the rear doors themselves, or it's because the rear doors are actually shorter than the front doors and there's less reverberation when closing them. So you don't really notice much of a difference. Well, at least that's my theory anyway, but I did remove them from the rear doors, and when you examine them, you can actually see a potential problem here. The lock essentially hits the rubber first, causing less of a sound than you would normally get, but you can see it looks like the surface of the rubber does get slightly peeled each time you open and close the door, meaning that you could potentially end up in a situation where the rubber gets eroded entirely and you're back to having the sound you started with. And I will track this over time, but I still think it's better than some of the solutions that use insulation tape or Gorilla Tape, and can only imagine having to peel that off would be an absolute nightmare. And if you're finding soundproofing your car to be a nightmare, this hour-long guide should answer every question you've ever had.